Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning study, and we're going to just open with a word of prayer. The dear Father in heaven, we invite your presence as we open your word, as we look at what you want to show us here this morning and this week. We know that there's so much that we do not understand, but there's much light that you've given us, and we just ask for the faith and strength to walk in that light, to trust you. You've given us so many evidences and so many privileges of understanding the time that we are living in, and that you are in control, that we can trust you. We pray for the ministry that you've given each one of us, to the people around us, and the time that we spend encouraging people to know you. We just pray, Lord, that that work will be fruitful, and that it will be to your glory. We pray that you can guide and direct in our study this morning as far as understanding the chronology of the kings and these stories. We pray that you can direct our study. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, well, good morning again, and welcome to this new week of morning studies. Now, we had a little bit of a discussion before, and I probably should record these discussions, just dealing with some of the things that are related to the understanding of chronology. Of course, that's something that I focus on a lot, and that our studies have been focused upon. Now, going through this chronology of the kings that we are working on is, putting these bones of Ezekiel 37, these dates, putting them in order. And there is when we're doing this, we know that there has been a false understanding of chronology. That is, if we look at William Miller's dream dealing with the casket, that casket, and the measurements of the casket were, does anybody remember what the measurements were?
Well, I think it was like 10 by 10 by 6, is it? Or 6 by 6 by 10?
Yeah, I thought
6 by 6 by
we
10.
get 360 altogether is what I remember, right?
Yes.
Yes, I think it's 6 by 6 by 10.
Yeah.
Now, and so, this understanding of time is really quite interesting. I'm just gonna, I know this kind of seems a little bit not related to our study specifically, but I think it relates. It's just something I found this morning, and this is in Ecclesiastes. It is, I should have remembered that. Ecclesiastes 9:11, one of those significant dates, which we have here as a verse. And it says, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill. But time and chance happeneth to them all. Now, we, of course, know this word time here is et, but there's different versions of this word et, right? So we have one word et, which is aleph tav, and this one is ayin tav, right? So now we already looked at the fact it's 6256. So what was the significance of this word being the Hebrew number 6256? It's Miller's casket, right?
360 when multiplied.
Yeah, right. So 6 times 6 times 2 times 5, it's the same as 6 times 6 times 10. It's 360. Okay. And so time and chance. Now, I never really looked at the chance one. That's Pega impact 6294.
I don't believe in chance.
Yeah. So, yeah, that one's 432 if you multiply them together, which is significant, but I'm not going to go into that one right now. But anyway, so this word time it's related to ad, which is just that is. So it's an event. Now in Genesis chapter 1, it's going to talk about the sun and the moon and the stars. And I know this is probably more a study for the like Friday night, but you're going to have them be for signs, for seasons, for days and years. And the word signs here, which here they have is ot, but it's also related to et. It's, in this case, they just have the O in it. So it's a sign. It's also a mark. So I think this one probably will show us from 2225, which is ut. But anyway, Aleph and Tav, the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And Jesus, of course, is the beginning and the ending, the Alpha and Omega, the first and last letter of the alphabet. So when we're dealing with all of this chronology, the thing that I'm trying to emphasize here is that this is about Christ. Now, the chronology of the kings of Judah, they are typical of Christ, right? That is, so we're putting these bones in order. Specifically right now, we're putting the bones of the kings of Judah, right? Obviously, the bones of the kings of Israel are marked there as well. And we say that these bones put together, they're the whole house of Israel. That is, that it would refer to the prophetic mirror, right? So we have all of these symbols that we are trying to put into place, where we're seeing that these are God's purposes. Now, in that verse in Ecclesiastes in 9:11, where it says time and chance, I take it as time is something that is under God's providence.
Yeah,
And
that word, I'm sorry, that word
that?
chance. That word chance, ain't it? Impact. That's what the Strong says. It's
Yes. So to understand that it's impact, yeah, I'd have to look into it a bit more. But why they use that word, why they translate it as chance. But I think it's more like the way that I understand chance in that verse is there is the normal thing that we call chance. Chance, in a sense, does exist, right? That is, people make choices that God does not control, right? There are things that God does not control. Do we agree with that? That he leaves things in our control. Like our choices are our choices.
Don't he give us the choice to choose or what one way or the other?
Yeah. So God does not control the choices that man makes. And that's what I understand to be chance. That's the uncertainty of man. But time is something that's under God's control. So when it says time and chance, it's that they're not both chance. That means we're under God's providence. That is, everything that is under heaven is time. But everything that is under the sun, that is from man's perspective, is chance. So when it says time and chance happens to them all, it's not saying that, everything is random. It says, even though there is this random element, there is also God overseeing these events. So when we look at the story of these kings, we can see that people make their choices and decisions, but God ultimately overrides those things. And so when we think about the battle is not always to the strong, or the race is not always to the swift, right? When we think about those ideas, we can see that in God's providence, it's also not the case. It is God oversees and controls in spite of the fact that man has choice. So all of these things that happened in the past, all of these stories, these are typical of the work that God is doing presently. And so, again, we're not treating them as dead facts, right? It's not last year's almanac. All of these things that we're studying, all of these dates that we're putting into place, they're meant to build prophecies that relate to God's people, to us individually, but also to what's happening in the world around us. And I'm having a hard time putting it into words, and I'm trying to think of how to illustrate this. But when we look at how other Christians look at prophecy, do they not look at prophecy much the same way that the Babylonians would look at astronomy? Do you understand what I'm saying here? So the Protestant method of understanding prophecy, if we think about prophecy and how people generally look at it, it's about predicting the future, right? But we know that that's not the purpose of prophecy. What is the purpose of prophecy?
Well, it relates to acquiring a Christ-like character.
Okay, right. And that's why the book, The Moral Purpose of Prophecy, that Louis F. Weir wrote, the significance of that book is he really brings that out, that prophecy is not meant to address our curiosity about what's happening in the future, as if somehow, if we know what happens in the future, that we're somehow going to be immune to its effect, right? That's the way that people look at it. But the purpose is not so much to know what's in the future, but to see God's hand leading and guiding us individually and what's happening in the world as time and chance occur in this world. We see God's purposes. So when we're studying these stories, and we kind of know this, right? It's not like, I'm telling you something you don't know, but we're putting these bones in order to illustrate something, and there's something that we don't understand yet. That's why we're doing this study, right? There's things that we don't understand, and that we need to know for ourselves individually in our walk with God. That is, there's dangers or snares that the study of God's word helps us avoid, but not because we can predict the future, but because we can be transformed in character. And so we know that there is not just moral lessons in the sense we don't read these stories and have the little, moral of the story at the end of the story, right? Like Uncle Arthur's Bible story books would do, or his bedtime story books. They're not just devotional stories in that sense. So that there is a structure here that we need to understand in the light of prophecy. So I don't know what we're going to find, but I do think we have to keep that in mind as we go through this. Because if we are actually putting these bones in order, if we are prophesying upon these bones, then that is significant. And
I was thinking about when the Bible Jesus told them that when you see these things come, that you would flee from Jerusalem. You remember that? He was showing them the times it was going to happen. He wasn't giving them the date, but he was showing them the events around.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely that's part of that. But Jesus says, "I told you things before they come to pass, that when they come to pass, you may believe that I am He." Right.
Yeah.
So his purpose. There's obviously an aspect of understanding what's coming upon the earth. So we know that that's part of it. I'm not saying that there's no predictive element, but not in the way that people are applying it. They think somehow if they know.
Well, you can't put the date on it, in other words.
Yeah, well, they just think that they're immune to the dangers that are there, right? Just knowing the future somehow is a substitute for knowing Christ. knowing that you're a sinner, overcoming sin, transforming your character. And I see this all the time in social media. Angela, you have a comment?
Yeah, I was going to say when it says prophesy upon these bones, it's not talking about use your own wisdom, your own opinion, your own predictions to speak to these bones. It's to hear from God first and then relay what He is telling us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you did put Psalm 39 and Psalm 90.
All to do with time.
Okay, yeah, that's what I fear. I'm pretty sure I know what Psalm 39 is. Yeah, so Lord, make me to know mine end and the measure of my days, what it is, that I may know how frail I am. And then 90, verse 12. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. And verse 15, make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. So all of these purposes, all of these failures, even, the battle is not to the strong, or the race not to the swift. We know that's true, that what we are going to experience as Christians in this world is things that are out of our control. But time is something that God oversees. So I don't take that time and chance are both negative things. Time is God's providence. Chance is that chaos because of man's choices. So even if we fail, right? Even if things don't go the way that we expect them to go, we can see that God is in control. And so we know that these purposes of these stories dealing with the kings is providential. So we've dealt with some of this overlapping of these reigns and how that works. We can see quite clearly that if we are going to match out the kings of Judah and Israel, for now we see that we got a spring to spring and a fall to fall reign. We know that the 40 years that Saul, David, and Solomon reign, there aren't exactly 40 years. We also understand then that Solomon would have died in his 41st year, not his 40th year. Right? I think that's how we understood it. Just because there isn't initially an accession year with David, if I remember. So we're going to go over these things again and again, but we should be able to see. And I'm just trying to open up this file. Which one is it? I think it's this one.
So that would mean that Solomon died after the spring equinox.
Right. That's what we're saying.
Right, okay.
Yeah, because of where you get Rehoboam's reign, and then where you get so Rehoboam has an accession year. No, is that right? I'm trying to think how that works. No, he doesn't die after. He dies before the spring equinox. Here, I'm getting confused myself. I have to go back here, see what we did. Okay. Oh yeah, I have this problem with this program always locking up. So I'll go look at the PDF instead. Yeah, because that was the thing that I was confused about, that I need to address again. What's this? Here it is. Okay, so I'll share the screen here. Yeah, so we got all of these. Going to make this bigger. So if we go back to how I had done it initially, we're going to go all the way back. I'll just go right back to 10, 90. So David, okay, 10:17. So David dies in his 40th year of his reign. Solomon commences his reign. So that's in 10:17. So his first year of his reign is in 10:16. So then when we went to 977. So yeah, so that's where I think I made a mistake. So this is how I originally did it. But now we're going to say that this is the 41st year of his reign. He still dies in before the spring equinox, but it's the 41st year of his reign. So if we go back here and we look at David's reign, David does not have an accession year, is what I'm trying to say. So I put here, Saul becomes king now in 1097. Now, does Saul have an accession year? He can't have an accession year, right?
Okay.
Right? So it's just how they count their reigns. David would not have an accession year either, right? Because he's not carrying over Saul's reign. So we can't use an accession year dating for these kings of the United Kingdom until we get to Solomon. He does have an accession year, but David and Saul do not. So we're going to count 1057 as the first year of David. Now, the thing is, they never give us the years of the king's reign of David or Saul. We only get Solomon is the first time we get a year of his reign. Okay, does that make sense, Stephen?
If you have the fourth year when he begins to build the temple.
Yeah. So this would be technically David dies in his 41st year of his reign because he doesn't have an accession year. And so the 41st year of the reign is this year of Rehoboam, right? So Rehoboam does have an accession year, and then his first year begins in the spring, right? I think that's how we did it. And then when we get to his 5th year, okay, where am I here? No, this is Solomon still. Okay, so when we get here, so this is going to be the 41st year of Solomon. So all of those need to be moved over. So I'm going to have to work that out and do a diagram of it. I'm not going to do that right now. But we do then have this accession year of Rehoboam is going to be, so that's what I'm trying to remember, death of Solomon, spring to spring. So yeah, he still does, I got to think this through. I'm still confused about it. I don't know how to do this, while we're doing the study. So I'm going to have to work through this again and draw it out. I should have done that. I was working on other stuff. But anyway, we're going to have the 41st year of Solomon, I believe. But the idea here is that when we have Rehoboam, his first year is not going to be until the spring of 1076 or 976 is the way that this works. So Jeroboam, his reign begins in the fall. The first year of his reign begins in the fall. That is clear. His first year of his reign does not begin in before the fall. So whenever he's taking over, so I think what we have is the accession year is from spring to spring. So it is in after the equinox, right? In order for this to work.
That, it would have to be according to that.
Yeah. But it's also going to be, we're going to have the 41st year in there somewhere as well. So
he would have had a long accession year then, Rehoboam.
Yeah.
So, because it would have had to been quite early as well, no after the equinox.
But you can see there. Yeah. Okay. Go on. Sorry.
For all the events to occur before Jeroboam has them two idols set up,
Yeah, and it seems to me like Jeroboam is really becoming the king of northern Israel. It's a gradual progression, right? So when he finally establishes himself as king, because they're going to have the battle, right? So there's
they were going to have a battle, but then it was
Yeah,
interjected by a prophet who says,
right. But still,
"Don't
they
kill."
have to gather all these men together, and it's going to take this. It's going to take time, is what I'm saying. There's a whole bunch of logistics dealing with that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And exactly how he does the golden calves. Maybe one of the reasons why he chooses the 8th month is that it takes him time to actually set up the golden calves. I don't know how much bureaucracy there was back then in getting things done. They seem to get things done pretty quick, but I would think that it didn't take a day.
Well, the
So
golden calf in the time of Aaron and Moses, that was pretty much done, within them 40 days. So
yeah,
probably towards the latter end of them,
yeah.
maybe just a few days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just the question of how these years stagger. So however we do it, we see that Jeroboam's first year has to precede the first year of Rehoboam's, right? In order for this to be true regarding so when we get to the 18th year of Jeroboam, that we're going to have 17 years. He reigns 17 years, Rehoboam does. So that 17 years, so you can see the difficulty of trying to maneuver these things around, because one is we assume that of course he dies in the 17th year of his reign, but yet if he's dying in the 18th year of Rehoboam, he actually has reigned technically more than 17 years, like calendar years, if you know what I mean, right? Because he had a long accession year.
Mm-hmm.
So a person could argue, well, we could move this if his first year was earlier, preceded Jeroboam's first year, then he would have died in the 18th year of his reign. So you understand what I mean? If I move that 17, we moved it up and said this is the 18th year.
Mm-hmm.
So the 18th year, because Jeroboam's 18th year starts a half year later, we'd have to say those 17 years, it would have been the 18th year of his reign when he died in the 18th year of Jeroboam's reign. So there is some support for the idea that he reigned 17 years, that is, he died in the 17th year of his reign, because you could argue he actually reigned 18 years, because his reign started before Jeroboam's reign. But they're going to use 17 years because they want us to be able to add these years up because we have an accession year, right? You understand the difficulty, because they want us to understand how to add up the kings of Judah. And if they said he reigned 18 years, that would make it more difficult for us to understand. That's the way that I look at it. But it's something that we still have to discuss. We still have to, as we start to go through these kings of Judah and Israel, we're going to have to look at some of the solutions that I had and that Stephen had and weigh out if these make sense. If we're doing something wrong, maybe we're making some kind of mistake about how we understand these years of reign. Okay? So I'm not sure what we're going to find, but we're going to work out the details. And these are not easy details to work out. They stretch our mind. And it's the conceptualization of these things that is difficult. It's drawing them out is also difficult, because every time you change one parameter, it changes everything else. So it's not an easy puzzle. Okay, and then we have that Abijam reigns for 3 years. But, see, this is the other clue. It says that it's in the 20th year of Jeroboam that Asa begins to reign. So that means that 3 years, there's a third year and then an accession year, right? Which we have here. Does that make sense? That that 18 and 20th year of the reign of Jeroboam with the 3 years of Abijam, what does that tell us about this? Like, we can see it here in front of us, but what is that telling us about how these reigns are counted? Because normally we'd say, well, if he died, if he began to reign in the 18th year of Jeroboam, and then he died in the 20th year of Jeroboam, wouldn't that be 2 years?
Yeah, so they had to be staggered.
Right. So they're staggered, but also here they are using the idea that he died in the 3rd year of his reign. Right. So it's more than 2 years. Okay. Now we're going to see that this creates problems as we start going through the kings of Israel, because we know that they don't have the accession year dating when they're changing dynasties, but they do have accession year dating when they're continuing a dynasty, right? What Americans call dynasties, right? So we have to keep that in mind. And the other thing that I really want to look at as we go through some of these kings is I do want to address Edwin Thiel in detail. That is, how he saw these co-regencies and why they don't work. In order to do those co-regencies, he has to reject a whole bunch of Bible verses. So that's another thing that we will look at. And we need to know that why. Why do we need to know about Edwin Thiel and the mistakes that he made? Why is that important, Stephen?
Sorry, say it again.
Why do we need to study Edwin Thiel's mistakes?
Well, it's good to understand how that his false chronology has impacted thinking out there, with others, and
right.
Really just largely the church has adopted his chronology as well.
And so we need to be able to quickly unmask the deception. So we know that people who are opposed to the 2520, for instance, will quote Edwin Thiel's dates for Manasseh, right? So he's going to have Manasseh begin his reign 10 years later. So instead of being in the 20th year of Manasseh's reign that he's taken captive, it's going to be in the 10th year of his reign. And they just say, well, that's, so early in his reign. Doesn't seem right. It should be later in his reign. But of course, they don't realize when they're using Edwin Thiel's chronology that they're rejecting 2 Chronicles 29 and 2 Kings 17 and 18 in regard to Hoshea and Hezekiah's reigns overlapping, right? And then, of course, what happens in 2 Chronicles 29 is going to happen, according to Edwin Thiel's chronology, after Samaria has been destroyed. But Ellen White plainly says it's before the destruction of Samaria, right? So he's going to contradict the spirit of prophecy, not just the Bible. And so for Adventists, we need to know how to answer these objections that we might run into. But we also need to be able to present it to them so they can see how the Bible and the spirit of prophecy are connected. That if you're rejecting, you're rejecting both of these sources of information, and instead putting the opinion of a scholar above inspiration. Now, Stephen, have you looked much into how Edwin Thiel connects Assyrian history with biblical history?
I have. Yeah, I write about it in Tabled History.
Yeah. Do you have a solution to what he did? I didn't read that part of Tabled History. I know you had addressed it, but
well, there is some other people who disagreed with him. Well, sort of disagreed anyway. When they found these here stele, is it stele or stele?
Yes, stele, yeah.
Yeah, can't remember the name. Kakar stele.
Yeah, where he tries to date that and connect it with the House of Omri or something.
Yeah, there's one with Omri, and then I think there's one, well, maybe Ahab's mentioned.
Yeah.
And then there's another one with another king. Can't remember the details.
Yeah.
But people just sort of jumped on the thought it was like, hey, this is Ahab from the Bible being mentioned. So a lot of people jumped in this. This is great. This is proving, external sources here proving the kings of Israel.
Yeah.
But there is then issues with that, with the chronology. And
Yeah.
so there was, well, maybe this is not, there was some other theologians, or not theologians, but more archaeological, Bible-related, believing archaeological people doing digs and so forth, excavations. I think one of them was called George Smith. So he didn't go along with the idea that this person was Ahab, because he realized that the chronology would be too late in the day for him. It wouldn't fit in with the Bible.
Yeah. Yeah. So Edwin Thiele just kind of ran with his assumption and ended up destroying the Bible chronology because of it.
Yeah, I think that Jehu as well. I think it was the other person, the other king mentioned.
Yeah, I always forget the different kings that were involved, but it does mention the house of Omri, right, or something in one of those stellies.
Well, Ahab, I think, is connected to it. Maybe, yeah. I think Omri being Ahab being from the house of Omri.
Yeah. So anyway, when you start really looking into the details, it's not as clear cut as people like Thiele tried to make it out in interpreting these ancient documents, right? So, but we are going to look at that. And we're going to look at how to defend this chronology. But I mean, we could just say, well, we believe the Bible and spirit of prophecy, and so Edwin Thiele's just wrong. But there are things that we have to answer. So that's something we will address, especially when we start to see how by creating these different co-regencies that you end up with some kings having children before they're born, which is usually pretty difficult.
That's really funny. Oh, I was going to say Isaiah 7:14 seems to be speaking of a very young person. So how could the king be aged when he was taken?
In which one?
Isaiah 7:14, which speaks of a virgin shall conceive, etc. So it sounds like it's talking about a pretty young person. So how could people...
Well, no, I wouldn't interpret it that way. A woman shall conceive and bear a son; they shall call his name Emmanuel. It's before he knows to refuse the evil and choose the good. See, some people interpret that as being a child, right? They come to the age of maturity, but it's actually referring to the conversion of Manasseh, because he refuses the evil and chooses the good when he's converted. And that's when the land is forsaken of both her kings. So when he's taken captive, we understand that he has a conversion, right?
Yes.
So that's what it's connecting to. It's not connecting to a young child. That's a false interpretation of.
Well, I thought a child or a young person.
Yeah, but that's what people.
Christ early in life.
Yeah, but it's not. It's referring to him later in life when he's converted.
Okay.
Because it's going to be in the 20th year of his reign that he's converted. But yeah, it's there's just so much when we're studying. We bring in things that we just assume, and so when we go through this, we're going to be really careful about how we look at these reigns. But the thing is, this 17 years he reigns, Rehoboam, but it's in the 18th year of Jeroboam's reign, which starts, his years of reign start 1/2 a year later. So there's, there could be an argument that people would have that you would. So let's look at it this way. We're looking at this chart here. So if I had moved, if we called this the 18th year instead of the 17th year, and so either we would have to have the 17th year, he reigned 17 years. Well, that wouldn't even match up with the 18th year. Right? But let's say it's just saying that he reigned 17 years, and we let's say we stagger them differently. So we move, I wish I could just move these over. Must be some way I could do it. But if I staggered this over so that the 17th year was after the 18th year, that is, that Rehoboam's, because if we look at the beginning here, so let's do it this way. So here we have the first year of Rehoboam, counting the years of his reign, a half a year after Jeroboam's. But if we made this the first year, right, then we would have this as the 18th year. And so that would mean that he reigned 18 years, right? That's how we would have to look at it. And then you would have, so this would be the 18th year of his reign. This 3 years would still fit in here, but you could see the problems. It doesn't, so this would end up being the third year, would kind of work still. Well, it wouldn't work. I don't know how you would do that. I still think this is the only way you can do it, right? We have to stagger them this way. We have to have Rehoboam's reign a half a year starts, his first year starts a half a year after Jeroboam's. And that makes sense because Rehoboam has an accession year, but Jeroboam does not. Right. So I just don't, and we couldn't make Jeroboam's reign starting in the spring and Rehoboam starting in the fall, as Edwin Thiel does. Right. So Edwin Thiel is going to switch these around. He's going to put Jeroboam begins in the spring, right? So he would switch it over here, and if you did that, you would have the 18th year of let's see here. So this would be the 18th year. The 17th year would be the 18th year. So how do you do that? So we'd have, that would be the 18th year of Jeroboam, right? So I'm switching them over, right? And then this would be the 17th year of Rehoboam. And that's how Edwin Thiel does it. He sees the 17th year overlaps with the 18th year. Right? So we have to consider that. So here's the possibility. Solomon could have counted his reign spring to spring, but Rehoboam may not have counted it spring to spring. So that would be the option. Now, if we had Solomon counting his reign spring to spring, what would be, or what fall to fall, pardon me, what would be the problem with the temple situation? So let's say we said that Solomon began to lay the foundation of the temple in 1013, but Edwin Thiel says that his reign is fall to fall, right? So if his reign was fall to fall, and you're going to have the 4th year of his reign begins, right, in the fall, not in the spring, then you would have to have the foundation of the temple laid in the spring of 1012. Does that make sense to people? It would be laid 1 year later, unless you counted Solomon's reign like earlier, right? Which wouldn't make sense if we use the fall to fall rate. The other thing is it would make, because you would be counting, so if you counted from 1012, we know how long did it take to build the temple. You start in the 2nd month of the 4th year and you finish in the 8th month of the 11th year. That's going to be 7 years and 6 months, right? But if you have a fall to fall reign, that's going to be 6 years and 6 months. Does that make sense to people? Because we always count the months from the spring. And if you're starting in the 4th year and it's a fall to fall reign, then when you get to the 8th year, to the 11th year of his reign in the 7th month or the 8th month when it's finished, then that's going to be 6 years and 2 months, right? Because you would still finish at the same time. It's just you would start it differently. Is that right? Or am I doing that backwards? I think we'd finish it differently. So I guess we would still, depends where you're starting his reign. If you started it in the fall of the previous year, then you could still start the temple in 1013, but you would finish it in 1007 in the 8th month here, right? Wherever it is, 1007. So in the 8th month. And that would be the 11th year of his reign, not the 10th, as it says here. So you see the problem? I don't know. I probably need a lot more diagrams to explain these details. I wonder if I had a diagram for that. I know I have a diagram dealing with the how it affects the siege in 1097 to 1096, but I don't think I have a chart. So I probably should draw a chart for that. So those would be helpful, right? If I drew a chart of these things, like if I did it to look like these types of diagrams. Where is it here? There we go. So if you look at a diagram like this, so this is how I worked out a lot of things before visually. I would put the years here in the line in the center. Those would be BC years. And then I would put the reigns of a king above or below it, spring to spring or fall to fall. And then I could figure out the spans, right? Now, oh, here it is. I do have this one drawn out. Okay, that's helpful. Okay, so when we look at this diagram, I'll do this, make it a bit bigger. Okay, I don't know if you can see all the little numbers down there, but I have all of the months, and I have, so this doesn't show the fall to fall dates, so I'm going to have to add that to it, below it. Probably what I could do is, do it this way. This will help. Okay, so when we take these, maybe I'll just, how's this work? Okay. I know I have to select these things. It's kind of annoying, but that's not what I want. Now, so you can see I counted the years of his reign, and that makes sense to people, right? We have the years of his reign. What is going on here? Okay, that makes sense. Oh, I see there's 2 blocks. Sorry about this. I'm going to copy this and paste this. Okay, so when we deal with these years of reign, so if he's going to begin, he's going to finish in the 8th month, fall to fall. I'm just putting this here and seeing how I would do this. So I guess I would move this over. Okay, so now we got these blocks. So this is going to be spring to spring at the top. And I don't know why it says Julian dates, but I see Julian years. And this is going to be fall to fall. Okay, does that make sense? Now, the reason why I didn't take these numbers here is because we don't number the months from the fall. So I didn't really want to take these and put them here like that. I would have to do this like this. So I'm going to have month. Okay, that's not working. Do it this way here. So get this month and change it. So you're going to have the year. If you're going fall to fall, the months will be numbered 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so then I can copy this. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing here. So then I would take these and I'd throw them in here, right? So they don't quite line up. I guess I need to move this over. Just hang on. It doesn't quite line up the way I would like. Oh, I see what I'm doing now. I'm trying to line that up with this. This one needs to line up here. Okay, because those are the months on our calendar in the middle. Okay, so that does work. So you can see we got all of these numbered months. Can you see those numbers, people, or is that hard to see?
All right. To answer your question, yes, you can see the numbers.
Yeah.
But just because my mind sometimes gets confused easily.
Okay.
You're making use of the Julian numbers, which I understand that.
The Julian years, right? Rather, I didn't write Gregorian because they're Julian. So that's in the center are the Julian years, right? BC.
Okay, but in this situation,
Yeah.
Solomon's reign of approximately 40 years
Mm-hmm.
would have had in that time frame a minimum of 14, potentially 15 leap months.
Yeah, and I'm not putting the leap months in there. That's just, I'm not worried about that here. But yeah, I know what you mean. There's leap months in there, right?
Okay.
Yeah, but we're not going to address the leap months just because it's, I don't need to figure that out for this. Okay. Down there. Oh, well, that's good enough. They're not quite even and everything, but we'll put that later. So what we can see here, I need to put this back up here. I don't know what I did there. Just need to have another month there. So in the second month, in the 4th year of his reign, in a spring to spring calendar, to the 8th month, in the 11th year of his reign, that's going to be 7.5 years, right? So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then a half. But if his reign was fall to fall, we would then have to start in the second month. So the way that I would do this, I'm going to have to borrow this as well. So I'm going to have to take this here. How does this work? Okay, all of these. And I put it down here. So we're going to count his reign, and it would look like this. Right? You would have, I've got to get rid of these arrows. Get rid of that arrow. Well, so ignore that arrow down there. So you could see that if it's going to be the 4th year in his reign in the second month, that's going to be the 5th year if we had gone spring to spring. So fall to fall would mark here that the temple is built. I'm just going to get this arrow. I need this arrow. Flip it around. So this then would point at the second month in his 4th year, and then the 8th month in his 11th year would still be here, right?
Yeah, should note the arrow. You've got it pointing at 1012. So
Yeah.
that would be the Julian calendar, would it not be?
Yeah.
So that would be like February.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so I would put it here.
No, one down. Just lower. No, that's going up.
Oh, you mean like here?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so point it to the second month in his 4th year. Yeah, that makes more sense. It's still pointing to the second month up here. But yeah, I should point it on this one. Okay. So yeah, so you got the second month in his 4th year is in the year 1012 BC. It still would be completed in 106 BC, but you can see that this is now 6.5 years, not 7.5 years. Okay? So that's Edwin Thiel's solution. So he's always going to have the kings of Judah being fall to fall, and the kings of Israel being spring to spring. And so we're going to consider that and work through it. We're not going to just say, well, Theodore figured it out this way, and so it is correct. We have to look at what that would mean if we adopted that. Now, of course, he's not going to have those years because he's going to take 45 years off the kings of Judah and Israel, right? So he's going to have 45 years less. So this would have to be 45 years earlier. But as far as how he calculated whether we go spring to spring or fall to fall, that sort of is still relevant. And so we're going to have to work through it again, just as we did before. Now, this may seem a bit tedious, and it is, right? There's not any way around this. I mean, we could just say we're going to accept what me and Stephen have done and leave it at that. But I don't think that that's useful for us. If we're prophesying upon these bones, we need to actually study them and understand these pieces of the puzzle. Now, obviously, how deep we understand these things, it's going to vary on different minds and how much we remember. But we need to understand the process that we go through. And we need to go through that process in order to understand the process, right? I don't see any way around it. Are people happy with that? What we're doing here? Is this useful for you? Because I don't want to impose something upon you that you don't want to do. But does this help?
Yeah, I think I don't like it. My flesh doesn't like it because I don't think this way that much. But I know I need to learn it.
Yeah, and I feel bad.
It's fine. I mean, I've taken courses before where it was drudgery, but it was for the better.
Yeah. Now, of course, we have a spiritual purpose here. And so that does make it a bit more enjoyable, right? Because
Amen.
It's not something that we're doing that's a drudgery that, like when I worked in the hospital and you're doing basically token range of motion exercises for, people who are bedridden with Alzheimer's and it doesn't really benefit them what you're doing, but they have to make it look like they're doing.
Yes, it does actually. I've done those and it definitely does help.
Okay, maybe it does. But,
you may not see it right away. I mean, it takes a lot of endurance, but I was working with somebody and it seemed I'm getting nothing, no response. But her son came in later and said there has been progress with my mother. And she was severely demented. And I thought, thank God.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I did is I would do range of motion exercises on the patients and sing hymns as I did that. So, but I did dislocate Kelly's grandmother's shoulder when I was doing range of motion on her. Mary Ross, I dislocated her shoulder, which is kind of a humorous story. And no pun intended.
Not to her.
Yeah. So, but anyway, she of course didn't really know what was happening because she was very far gone with Alzheimer's at the time. But anyway, there are things that we do that we know that there is a purpose in them. So when there's a purpose, it gives us more motivation. But there are things that we can do in life that are not necessarily, they don't meet a bigger purpose. They're just sort of things we have to do because somebody arbitrarily thinks we need to do them, whether, maybe it's schoolwork, things we have to learn in school that have served no purpose. But here, in going through this process, it will help us to understand, how God has designed things, right? And that's the purpose too, even with, the celestial clock, God's celestial clock, understanding the dates and the symbols, and the structures that Stephen and I have found in this chronology, especially the one Stephen has found that connect all of these years in the broader sense. My stuff tends to deal with more the details of days and so forth. But, we find these structures and they are real. They're not based upon a fantasy. We're not manipulating things. But there may be things that we see and maybe things that we correct. So part of, what I need to do is I did all this work on my own initially. And maybe I did some things wrong, but I do want to look at what would happen if we took the kings of Judah and just said they're always fall to fall until Zedekiah, when Nebuchadnezzar appoints Zedekiah, he's going to give him a spring to spring reign, right? So what Edwin Thiel does is assume a fall to fall reign for Zedekiah, because we know Josiah has a fall to fall reign. But it's here then, if we ended up having 6.5 years for the building of the temple, and that would be, it would be rounded up to being 7 years. It'd still be 7 years as a symbol, and it would still end up being completed at the same time, but it would be when it started that would be different. That didn't work. Select the right thing. There we go. So that span of time, it just ends up being shorter. And whether that, if that was correct, I guess I have to point it here at the 8th month. Doesn't look like it's lining up properly, but anyway, I'll deal with that later. I like things looking orderly. Okay, but you can see that there are some things we have to go through, and we have to check our work. We have to say, is this correct? Because I could be wrong. Maybe the kings of Judah were always fall to fall, and maybe it's 6.5 years to build the temple, but you would still have the temple completed at the same time. It's just that the 4th year of Solomon's reign would have been shifted. But then how would that affect other reigns further down the line? And that would put then, how would we count Jeroboam's and Rehoboam's reign? How would they interact? All of those things are details. You can see the problem. You change one thing and everything changes, right? So when I did this chronology, I had to get the whole picture in my mind so that I could move around different things, because to do it physically was just too difficult. I tried doing diagrams and stuff, so that didn't work. I had to get it in my head so that I could think it through. And some of that's gone, believe it or not. I can't remember all of the details that I used to know about the chronology of the kings of Judah and Israel. But I worked out a lot of it, and some of it took a long, long time, like weeks of work. So, but this is an example. So we have these two options: the fall to fall reign of the kings of Judah, Solomon having a fall to fall reign. This is what Edwin Thiel argues. That makes this 6.5 years. If we have a spring to spring reign, it's 7.5 years to build the temple. Now does the Bible tell us that it's 7 years? It does, right? But the question is that an inclusive count, or just, the count based upon the years of the reign of Solomon? So we then have to decide, how do we count things? How does the Bible count things? Is it always consistent, right? So those things that I struggled with back in 2012, 13, 14, when I started working on this chronology of the kings of Judah and counting out these years of reign, I had to figure out, well, how do I count? And when I got to Ezekiel in like 2015 and 16, and I was looking at, is Ezekiel using a spring to spring count for the years of the captivity, or is he using a fall to fall count? I had to weigh that in my mind. How do I do it? Which one works? And neither worked. That is, if I used a spring to spring count, ended up with contradictions. And if I did a fall to fall count, and then I realized in the dream that there's two different counts. There's the fall to fall was the count for Josiah, right? Jehoiachin's captivity, right? And then the spring to spring was for Zedekiah's reign. And so when you get to Ezekiel chapter 40, so in Ezekiel 40, you have in the 5 and 20th year of the captivity. So I'm just sharing the screen here. So the 25th year of the captivity. So if you're counting the captivity fall to fall, and you're in the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah, on the 10th day of the month, then the 25th year of the captivity would be counted just as we count the 5th year of the captivity. And we have the 5th year of the captivity in 592, but it's in the 5th day of the 4th month. But this is in the fall. So if it's the 25th year, that means it's 19 years and guess would be what, 5? So 19 years and a couple of months, right? 5th day of the 4th, 19 years and 3 months and 5 days. So does that make sense? Maybe I'll have to draw this out again too at some point where we're going to address this, but that would be 19 years later, not 20 years later. So it's the 20th year of the captivity, and then it's the 10th day of the month in the 14th year after the city was smitten. So the 14th year is just an ordinal count, right? So if the city is smitten in 586, then the 14th year would be 13 years later, right? And then it talks about being the self-same day, that is the bone day, that the hand of the Lord was upon me and brought me thither, right? So anyway, we got the 14th day, the 25th year, but we also know it's the Jubilee year, right? So the 30th year was in 592. So this is 573. So it's 19 years later, not 20 years later. And so Edwin Thiel, when he dealt with this, it didn't make any sense. It created all kinds of contradictions. So we don't want to have contradictions. We want to understand God's word correctly, but it doesn't mean my understanding is 100% correct, right? So we're going to have to examine that. Okay, so again, not very fun, but we will, as we go through this, as we understand these puzzles, as we put together these stories, I think it will be very helpful. So we got Abijah, we got Asa, and we got to deal with this league and Nadab and Baasha. So we did kind of go through this cursorily, but we'll go through this in more detail throughout this week. And we have this here, Baasha reigns in Israel. In the 3rd year of Asa, king of Judah, began Baasha, the son of Ahijah, to reign over Israel. In Tirzah, 24 years. So these all become really interesting to me to put this puzzle together. So any final thoughts before we close in prayer? I know there's a lot going on in our heads, or maybe not as much as there should be, but a lot of things to think about, and not just in this particular study, but just in all of the studies we've been doing. Stephen?
Yeah, are you going to get the board out again and sort of go over that?
I should use the whiteboard, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do that. Because the whiteboard is a little more easy to maneuver these things around than with PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is a good idea. Yeah, I haven't used the whiteboard for a while. It's there behind me, but I'd have to move it a bit closer to the camera, I think. I don't know. I could probably zoom it or whatever. But yeah, okay. Yeah, that might be a good idea. I haven't used the whiteboard for a while. Okay. Thanks for that suggestion. It's a good idea. I know they have a whiteboard with Zoom, but I'm pretty sure that doesn't work too well. I've never been good at drawing with a computer, but maybe I could practice it. Anyway, let's close with prayer. Dear Father in heaven, we are grateful once again for the time that we have had. We're thankful for each person who is seeking to know you. And we're thankful for each person in this group. You've brought us through a lot together in studying, and we know, Lord, that there's more to do. And so we just ask for your care and protection throughout this day and this week. You know the challenges we face, and we just pray, Lord, that you can help us to be faithful, help us to trust in you. And we pray that your angels will watch over us today, and that we can come again tomorrow to study these things. And this is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.